they find themselves in a really bad situation. I truly do believe that. I mean, you're choosing one or the other, and you're not going to be able to go get one in free agency. You're not going to get one in the draft right now. You're pretty much saying it's going to be Justin or Russell, and I don't know if that's good enough to get you where you're at. I mean, you recognize the problem, but he didn't come up with any solutions of how to fix it.
Mark, I look at that, and I thought the same thing that, we were talking about chasing quarterbacks, and if you don't get the one you want, how far it sets you back. Are you of the belief that, okay, assuming one of them signs, and I got to believe he has to, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into this, but it sounded to me like Fields was more likely. If that's the case, do they have to draft someone in this draft or just find some free agents until next year when it appears to be more plentiful in terms of quarterback availability and guys coming out at that point in 2026 that can help you if you fall far enough and maybe get up higher in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really go into this draft thinking about using a second, maybe third day pick on a quarterback. I mean, you're talking about really wishing and hoping right there that one of those guys pan out. There's not too many Tom Brady's or Dak Prescott's in the world over the past 50 years of drafting quarterbacks. So you're almost wasting a pick here unless you fall in love with somebody. Even if you do fall in love with somebody, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the pedigree has to be there. And I don't think that just to put a body in the room, a young body, is going to be something that's conducive of them finding their next quarterback. So, I mean, he did mention he wants to find a quarterback potentially in the draft, but he also said this year or next year. I would not feel forced to go find a Jalen Milroe in the third day or late second day just because he might be a guy that you're semi-interested in. I mean, that's a project on top of a project right there. And
plus, they have a lot of other needs, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, and they could get to the quarterback eventually, but if it's not available, don't force it. And I think that's what got him into trouble with Kenny.
Especially when you can find running backs in that spot. You can find defensive linemen in that spot. You can find depth players in that spot. If you're just going to take a quarterback and hope he might work out, you might as well just wait until you have a better feel for something. But, I mean, we all forget here, what happens if Russell Wilson wants to go to the Raiders? What happens if Justin Fields gets paid somewhere else? Then what do? You're in big trouble. So they got to get on this quarterback, one or the other, immediately. And they got to give him an offer where he says, okay, I'm not going to free agency then.
Mark, my biggest takeaway was when Art was asked about if you're closer to a championship now than a year ago, and he seemed like very hesitant to answer it. And to me, it seemed like the answer was no. Do you think they're closer than a year ago?
Probably. I mean, they're probably very similar, right? I mean, what has changed? Quarterbacks all changed over. I mean, last year at this time, you still had some hope. I'm talking about right at this time that Kenny Pickett might have that one last opportunity to turn into that 20th overall pick. So there was still a little bit of hope there. I mean, Mason Rudolph was coming off a season where there was some promise, at least late in the season there. But you have to be very careful of reading anything that Art's saying right there. I mean, there's stuff that he says that he believes, then there's stuff that he says that he knows he has to say, or people like Joe Starkey will be just absolutely killed him for months for not saying or saying, no, hey, we're close. No, he can't say that we're close at this point.
I don't know how to read into that, Bob. Was that a criticism? Was the big boy taking a shot at me there?
No, I'm just saying if he came out and said, Joe, I think we're probably better off than we were last year, you would destroy him, right?
Yeah, how would they be better off than they were last year?
That's what I'm saying. So,
no, I think, and he cited the difference between the teams that are still involved and what they have, and specifically quarterbacks and their ability to strike quickly.
Right, because the guy that he has entrusted his franchise to, who's been running the show now for a long time, Mike Tomlin, chose the wrong quarterback,
right? And when you
chose the wrong coordinator, and instead of having him pay for that in any kind of way, even up to and including his job, Art lavished him in the year they got rid of Pickett and Canada. That he lavished him with an unusually long 3-year extension, making him one of the 5 highest paid coaches in all of sports.